They say the family that plays together stays together. Well, if that's the case, then the Bennett family ought to be together for a very long time because they're all computer game nuts, from mom and dad to teenager Bill to grade schooler Steve. The Bennetts think that computer games are not only fun, but educational. Today, we'll take a look at the newest and best computer games on this edition of the Computer Chronicles.
The Computer Chronicles is made possible in part by CompuServe, featuring an online reference library, Wall Street reports, at-home shopping, airline reservations, games, and hundreds of other services. CompuServe, helping people get the most from computers. Additional funding is provided by McGraw-Hill, publishers of Byte. Byte's detailed technical articles on new hardware, software, and languages cover developments in computer technology worldwide.
Welcome to the Computer Chronicles. I'm Stuart Chaffee, and this is Gary Kildall. Gary, chess is an ancient game, as we all know, but this little computer, which is not so ancient, I hate to tell you, can beat me in a game of chess. Let me show you how small this thing really is. I can open it up, and that's the whole thing.
There's the old chip right there. The
battery's bigger than the computer, and it knows how to play chess. We're going to be talking about game software today, Gary, and some people may think that's frivolous, but from a programmer's point of view, I would think the challenges of writing a game are much the same as those for writing business software.
Well, there are a lot of similarities and a lot of differences, Stuart. In the case of business software, for example, the coding is often very file-intensive. In the case of game-playing software, it's often real-time because the player wants to get an instant response. So it depends an awful lot whether you're programming for one of these things or not even a PC, but often programs for game-playing are written in assembly language, time-critical sections are examined very, very carefully and so forth. But the new machines that are coming out, the faster processors, the high-resolution graphics really give us a whole new level of really fun educational games as well as business software.
We're going to see some of those today. We'll be looking at games for two machines, the Commodore Amiga and the Apple II GS. And among the games we'll see are Earl Weaver Baseball, Ferrari Formula 1, the Tower of Myen, and Shanghai. Now, one kind of computer game is the adventure game or interactive novel. And a good example of that is Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. We're going to start today with an interview we recently had with Douglas Adams in which he talked about his fascination for computer games.
Douglas Adams, best known for the hugely successful Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, has discovered a new way to startle, befuddle, and astonish his fans with a text adventure game called Bureaucracy. It's based on his own experience trying to get his bank to acknowledge a change of address. When the bank finally responds,
They wrote me a very nice, very apologetic letter saying, yes, but this is absurd, we do agree, and it was very silly of us, and we will make sure it doesn't happen again, and our records have now been corrected, and so on and so forth. Guess where they sent the letter? To the old address, yes. You can't win. And I mean, this is the fundamental premise which lies behind this game. Your object is to get your bank to acknowledge your change of address card, but you go through hell in order to try and achieve it.
the inevitable outcome of Bureaucracy also reflects the exotic bureaucratic horrors faced by the author while on a photography expedition to the island of Madagascar.
The most appalling bureaucracy. I mean, it is just insane. When you first arrive at the airport, you go into the arrivals lounge, and the bit you encounter there is almost as long as the entire journey to get there. Because for every flight they set up, for every flight that comes in, there's this sort of great shanty town that grows up of little sort of booths, desks, huts, tents, and anybody who hasn't got anything better to do and has got something green to wear can come down there and is allowed to go through your passport, go through your belongings, get you to fill in forms that you can't understand, and it'll take you hours to get in. So anyway, in this game you will end up in a country called Zalagasa, in fact. And you cannot avoid getting there. You will run into terrible trouble at the airport. You're trying to get to Paris. Whatever method you try to reach Paris by, you will end up hanging from a tree in the middle of the jungle, from a parachute in the middle of. You either will have been thrown off the plane, or you will have parachuted out with a hijacker who's taken you as a hostage, depending on which flight you get on, or if you've really got the wrong flight, you'll actually find yourself in a plane belonging to the Zalagasser Parachute Club. And there is no way you can avoid it. And so you are driven through this game by the sort of demons of bureaucracy.
Joining us now in the studio is Brody Lockard, the guy who wrote the game Shanghai, and next to Brody is Lucy Bradshaw of Activision, the company which publishes Shanghai. Gary?
Brody, I'd like to find out what the background is. How did you come up with Shanghai?
Well, I'd written the game several years ago on a mainframe computer, and I had hoped to port it to a microcomputer, and was a little bit disappointed with the resolution and the graphics available on micros. When the Mac came out, I saw a chance to put it on a computer that would do it.
So that was your first version, was the Mac version? Then?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Can we take a look at the game?
Yeah, let's take a look and play Shanghai for us.
Well, Shanghai is based on traditional mahjong tiles. The game consists of a pile of 144 tiles in a pyramid sort of formation called a dragon. The object of the game is to find matching tiles like this that are free, meaning that they can slide off to the left or the right of the pile.
So the top of the pyramid, Brody, is right in the center of the screen, then, huh?
Right, that's right.
So you've got like a pile of 4 tiles in the middle, is that it? Or?
Yes, five at the highest point in the center of the formation.
So part of the problem is some of the tiles are hidden. You don't know who's underneath.
That's right. Each game is different. The tiles are randomized, and as you remove them, you see further combinations and further moves.
Lucy, tell us what you're doing right now. You're playing it.
What I'm doing is I'm finding matches, and
Well, don't stop playing. Just tell me what you're doing.
directly match. And I can go up and remove the tile, or I can just double-click on the second one to remove it a little quicker once you become familiar with the game.
Okay. And for people who don't know Mahjong, they're kind of suits, right? I mean, there's dots and bamboo
and you have information on the tiles, if you'd like, to get exactly what they are and how they match. There are also rules, and if you're not too familiar with the game, you can cheat by having it show all the moves. So there's 3 tiles that match. You have to choose which 2 you're going to remove, and that is where the strategy becomes involved, where you're going to start removing and how you're going to attack the stack of tiles.
Can I ask you to kind of fast forward to what the end of the game might look like? And while she's doing that, Brody, did you ever think of an actual Mahjong game rather than a solitaire version?
Yes, I've thought about that. It would be quite a bit more complicated because there's supposed to be 4 players, and the scoring strategy changes according to the International Mahjong Players Group each year.
Okay, right now Lucy's right near what would be the end of the game with only 2 pairs left. And she has won.
And this is what you win.
And what now you get some sort of reward. Oh, there's the reward for winning the game.
Yep, you've beaten the dragon.
Brody Stewart tells me that Shanghai is very relaxing to play rather than competitive. Why is that?
I think it's very easy to learn, and it's pleasing to look at the tiles. They're really pretty to look at. There's not a lot of fast action, and there's no timing unless you ask it to time you.
And again, it's pretty quick to learn, which is a nice feature of any game. You don't have to read a huge manual to figure out.
Also, now this has been ported around to a couple different machines. What's it written in?
It's written in C.
Okay.
Are you working on any other games now, Brody?
Yeah, I'm just finishing up a game called Solitaire Royale, which is a collection of solitaire card games.
And for what machines?
I've written it for the Mac. It's also available on the IBM.
Brody, Lucy, thank you very much. In just a minute, we're going to take a look at another new game for the 2GS that uses stereo sound, so stay with us. With us in the studio now are Richard Seaborn and Jeff Leffords, both of whom have created a new game called The Tower of Myen, which is published by PBI Software. Gary.
Richard, this machine, or your game, uses a special board apparently to produce the stereo sound. How is the sound actually stored in the machine?
The actual sound is stored in digitized data. That is to say, we take an audio source, such as a tape or a stereo playback, and we'll record that effectively into RAM on the computer, and we can play that back at varying rates.
Played back through that special board that's in there?
Yes.
Okay. Tell us about the game.
The actual game is the Tower of Myen. What you're trying to do is play the role of a knight of justice, a defender of right. You're going into the tower to try to prove that you are good, justified, and that you are also intelligent and, shall we say, a bit strong. You want to go through all the monsters in the combat and so forth and try to prove you're good and get the medallion from Mendeley.
Okay, give us an example of how you use the sound in here and how you've added sound to a typical adventure fantasy game.
Okay, a lot of adventures in the past have always had sounds because they harp a lot on the adventure, and they forget the other side, the action side and the sound side. It really makes it like you're there, puts you in the situation. What we've done is go ahead and say anytime you go through doors, you hear the doors slam. When you A portcullis falls, you hear that slam. Any sort of noises, including everything ranging from every individual monster has its own roars and screams. I'm going to show you an example right here.
Okay, tell us what you're doing as you do it.
Okay, I'm going into the room. I'm fighting some ghosts and some demons.
And each one of those sounds has been digitized through a tape player.
Now I've died.
Okay, no more sound.
Now, and the monsters on the right side come out of the right
They're
side.
coming out of the right
speaker.
side.
Okay. Mhm.
So
And
you can hear them shift back and forth. As you move across the room, the monsters will try to follow you, and you can try to follow them. You can hear both sides.
So you're not only having, you don't only have a heavy use of sound here and all the sound effects, but stereo sound effects on
Yes.
top of it.
Yeah.
Now you have a pretty clever way of getting the most out of the space you have in there in terms of the reuse of sounds. Explain that.
Okay, sound data can be used again and over and again by trying to find sounds which, when played back very fast, actually can be heard by the human. It's something different. An example would be we'll hear ghosts moaning and screaming and demons roaring. And those same sounds can be changed by playing back very quickly as being a much smaller creature because it's actually higher frequency. And the same thing, the ghost moan, for example, does become a rat squeak. And the thunderclaps can become door slams and so forth.
Okay, now there are lots of adventure fantasy games around. What really distinguishes this new one and makes it different from the others?
Okay, well, the other ones have already tried one of two approaches. Take an already existing game and make it better, or do something entirely new. This game says, well, wait a minute, that's not really the way to design a game. Take all the games that have been good, take all their advantages, and put them into one.
Steer a little bit from everybody.
Sort of like Bach. Take what each one is that's good and put those into your game and make the adventure something that an adventurer will appreciate, not just a maze to go through.
Now, with all this digitizing, I mean, what are the memory demands of this game?
The actual game will work in a 512K machine.
So you need minimum 512K to even play
Yes.
the game.
And what about the price of the board and so forth they had on board?
The stereo card,
Yeah,
or the stereo card from MD Ideas, is really not that expensive. You remember
It's
the
normally
exact price?
$60. Yeah.
Okay, so it's relatively
And you don't even need the card to play the game, although
Okay.
it helps a lot.
Just to get the stereo out of it.
Yeah, just to get stereo.
And it'll also allow you to drive speakers directly if you don't have an amplifier or stereo available.
Okay, now getting back to memory, you say you need minimum 512, but
If you have more RAM, you can actually have more sounds. For example, when the character's running through the mazes and he confronts obstacles, some sounds will be abridged, shortened, or entirely removed in order to fit in that memory. If you have more memory, the game says, hey, I'm going to use your more memory, and it loads in more sounds. So like when he dies, you'll hear him scream no as he collapses to the floor instead of just collapsing to the floor with a grunt.
Okay, you got some more games coming up like that now?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we do.
Well, I think the most satisfying thing, Garrett, is this guy wrote the game and he died just in there. And I got a lot of pleasure out of that. Gentlemen, thanks very much for joining us. Now, what happens when you buy a game, you come home and you can't play it, or it doesn't work, or you get stuck in the middle of an adventure game and you don't know where to go next? You call a customer support line, and if you're lucky, somebody answers the phone. What happens on the other side of that phone? We asked Wendy Woods to find out.
Customer support, Michael speaking. Can I help you?
Michael is one of 15 customer support people manning the phones at Electronic Arts. Their job is to answer any question about any of the firm's 64 game titles across a range of 7 different computers. How do they do it?
Well, all the customer reps have booted up every product at some point in their career. Also, because we do the original testing on the product before it ships, I have an expert in the department that has spent 40 to 80 hours with the product. And we go through the test plan individually prior to the product shipping. So we're all familiar with it. Within the first 5 weeks of ship, we know what any question is going to be for the life of the product.
And just in case memory fails, the reps have extensive libraries of game clues and technical solutions at their fingertips. Among the strangest calls they've received was the one about the dog that ate the Starflight disc. It was replaced free of charge. And the distraught father whose kid ran up a $300 phone bill trying to solve the game Bard's Tale.
And we do get numerous calls from parents, again, wanting to know who we are. Usually they've probably solved the game by the time the phone bill catches up.
Surprisingly, most of the 500 calls they log each week come from grown-ups. You'd think that after a long day at the telephones, slaving over hot computers, the people here would want a break. But no. What do they do in their spare time? They play games. In San Mateo, for the Computer Chronicles, I'm Wendy Woods.
Joining us in the studio now is Eddie Dombrower, president of Mirage Graphics, and next to Eddie is Rich Hillerman. Rich is with Electronic Arts. We've got an Amiga 1000 joining us, and Gary, we're going to see two neat games now, Earl Weaver Baseball and Ferrari Formula 1.
Okay, Eddie, how do these games differ from what traditional simulation? We've seen lots of baseball games and racing car games. What is different about this?
Well, the fundamental difference that we have in both of these games is that we use physical models of the real world, so that all the action happens in the place of the real world, and every now and then we update the screen so that you know what's happening in the real world.
Okay, what's an example of what you see?
Well, for example, in the real world, the ball falls at 32 feet per second squared, and when the hit is calculated, we calculate the trajectory of the ball, so if it's going to be a home run, it has to go up at a certain velocity so that it will fall behind the fence.
Eddie, in terms of the strategy here, it's called Earl Weaver Baseball. Did he actually play a role in developing this?
He played a very large role. He met with us about 5 times. We spent a lot of time with him talking about strategies, about the plays that he uses, both offensively and defensively, the way that he picks his lineups, the way he picks his rosters. All those things, he spent an awful lot of time playing the game and evaluating and giving us feedback on things that we've done and giving us some new ideas himself.
Yeah, well, let's take a look at it.
Okay. Well, we're in the bottom of the 8th inning here in a game between the American League All-Stars from the beginning of the century against the National League All-Stars 61-75. Earl's managing this team, which is the National League, and I'm managing this team here. Babe Ruth is up, and the tying run is on third base, and it's represented by Tris Speaker. He's not a very fast runner, so I'm going to bring in Sam Crawford. But first, I'm going to look at his statistics. We have over 40 stats per player, and this determines how he does in the field, on the base paths, and of course at bat versus left and right-handed pitchers.
Okay, so we saw the lineups of all the players. Now we're looking at the stats of any particular player.
That's right.
And then you can go to the actual game.
That's right. So I'm going to pick up Crawford and put him on speaker, and then change his position to center field so that my defense is set up here. And then I can pull people in and out of the bullpen, but now we're ready to go back into the game.
Woo. Okay, what field are we in?
Now we're looking at the Polo Grounds. You can play in any ballpark, either real or fictional. You can design your own. It's one of the important things about using the physics models. It doesn't limit you to certain configurations of ballparks, so we can have that giant green monster in Fenway. What I'm looking at here is my options of plays that I can call on the offense. But I've got my base runners on. I'm ready to go. So let's see what Babe Ruth can do against Sandy Koufax.
Because we've got a kind of close-up on the right there of the pitcher in the
There's a
bag.
close-up. There's the pitch. He struck him out.
Okay.
Between innings, we get a television
Okay, you might explain, you're in what you call a one-pitch mode right now, so we're not really seeing a lot of pitches.
That's right. We do this so that you can very quickly go through a game. We also have a mode where you can see every single pitch.
And it takes 3 hours.
That's right. It can. So now we also have an instant replay feature in this case, Earl comes out to argue. So we can see what he's arguing about here.
Okay, so because his runner was thrown out at first.
Right.
Okay.
So it was here's the instant replay. It's a slow motion replay. We can also freeze frame in the replay so we can see the seams spin on the ball on the pitch. So we'll see here that as the pitcher comes to the plate, we can really see the seams go there. So there's the hit.
Okay, we've got to see if he was really out at first base
That's
or
right.
not, huh?
It's going to be close. Ooh, a tough call.
What do you call it, safe?
Called him out.
It looks safe to me.
Here comes Earl, because he agrees with you.
Eddie, now the action in the baseball game is really determined by the particular facts of that situation, isn't it?
That's right. The statistics of each player, his ratings, the wind conditions, whether or not we're on AstroTurf or natural turf, where the fences are, all those things affect the outcome of each individual play and therefore each individual game. Everything's rolled up with a random number and everything's different every time.
Must be a heck of a programming job, actually. Also, let me ask you about the digitized sound. We heard a lot of those sounds. What role does that play in the game?
Well, we tried to make it as much like a TV experience watching baseball as possible, and sounds are a major part of that. And Terry Mason did an outstanding job of integrating the crowd sound effects and the umpire, which are digitized sound effects, as is the backcrack, with the announcer's voice, which is phonemes generated by the Amiga. It's tough to get those names to be pronounced correctly.
It's realistic. Huh?
Yeah,
that's an impressive game. I want to turn now to you, Rich, and talk about Ferrari Formula 1. Tell us about the development of that.
Okay, Ferrari Formula 1 was designed from the beginning to be a Grand Prix simulation as opposed to a racing game. So we spent a great deal of time finding out about the Ferrari F186 that was used in the 1986 World Championship season, and finding out about each one of those individual tracks and the drivers that performed on the circuit that year. One of the things that we did was realize that at least a portion of the part of Grand Prix racing is the engineering and setting up of the car for each one of those individual tracks.
Okay, Gary, show us how you do that on this. That's pretty impressive.
Okay. This is the paddock screen, which is a menu system that we use to get you from different places. For instance, here you can see the Brazilian flag. You can see that there's a sun, which means that the weather is currently sunny and that the current selection has it set for a 2-lap race. Around the track is the garage, the transports, which allow you to get to other tracks, race control, which allows you to control the simulation, and the pits. And I have some final setup to do before we go do this race, so let's go straight here.
You can push on any of those things, click on any of those things, and then you'll...
And it creates another reaction. Okay. So what I'm going to do is, because I'm not quite sure how to set up for here, I'm going to ask for advice from Morrow, who's a built-in computer crew chief.
Okay, so there are all the choices you have in setting up your car.
Right. What I can do is, this is the engine system requester, fuel injection ROM, oiling system, the turbocharger, etc. This is the tire requester, which allows me to select between different compounds and different tread designs. Wing settings, which are important for aerodynamics and maximum downforce, and suspension settings. Also on the screen is a race scoring monitor that's exactly modeled after the Longines Olivetti system that's used in Formula One racing. So I think we should just go out and get into this race.
Okay, now in this particular demo you're going to show us, the computer's really driving the car, right?
But when you drive the car, you drive it using the mouse, using the right button is the accelerator, the left button is the brake.
The first thing you see is what look to be real rear view mirrors.
Right. Those rear view mirrors are showing you exactly what's behind you, which in this case is unfortunate because there's nobody behind you. You are in 8th place. That guy was unkindly cutting in front of us. The dash you see in front of you is an exact copy of the dash that was on the F186. The top display is the turbo boost. The bottom display is the RPMs. I'm going to crank up my turbo boost so we catch up here. There's a gear shifter that you see is working there. The steering wheel moves, front wheels move. The object of this game is a little different than most driving games in that your role isn't just to run one race, it's to win the entire season. That means you have to survive to finish the season. So you have to be careful and conservative and not destroy yourself.
And you can crash and get in trouble here like you could
exactly.
in the race too.
If you were to run into the back of one of these cars at the proper speed, it could knock you out for anything from 1 day to the entire season.
Rich, we're kind of going for a ride here, sort of on autopilot. Is there some degree of randomness in it, and we'll get a different ride each time?
Well, Rick Koenig, when he built the physics model and wrote the rest of the program, we did some data analysis on real-world drivers and discovered kind of the factor of error that they had. So we built that into both this AI opponent as well as the other AI opponents. Those other AI opponents are designed to be similar to the top finishers of the season.
Rich, Eddie, thank you very much. I know what I'll be doing this weekend now. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back next week with another look at games for the Macintosh and the IBM PC, so join us then. In the Random Access file this week, NEC has announced the release of its first neural computer utilizing neural network technology. NEC says its neural computer will have a calculating capacity 100 times faster than a conventional PC. Sources say the computer will feature an operating system that includes voice and character recognition. The neural computer will be priced at around $12,000, delivery promised by the end of the year. Apple has released version 6.0 of the Macintosh operating system. The new OS features an improved multi-finder, a macro function called Macro Maker, and a utility for visually impaired users called Close View, which can magnify screen images up to 16 times. Version 6.0 also includes a map utility. No, it doesn't map your hard disk. It's a map of the world that gives you instant time and distance calculations between global locations. IBM has announced it'll start bundling Microsoft Works with the PS2 Model 25. Works is an integrated word processor, spreadsheet, database, and communications program. Borland International has released its first word processor. It's called Sprint, and the unique feature of it is a user-defined user interface. You can tell it to act like WordPerfect, WordStar, Microsoft Word, or Multimate. Sprint will sell for about $200. Time for this week's software review. Here is Paul Schindler.
Well, that's one way to have fun on the phone. Another is to use SmartCom 2 for the Macintosh. It offers the best balance between features and ease of use I've seen, and it's the only telecom program that's actually fun to use. As you start the program, SmartCom shows you all the things it can do, including sending material to the printer or the disk drive. When you select one of the icons along the bottom, SmartCom translates it into the command lines above. When text, like your sign-on, is needed, a dialog box pops up for the entry. In most communications programs, automating communication with host computers can be a pain. SmartCom 2, like all Mac software, uses icons to make it easy. You create scripts that can automatically sign you on, then neatly extract all waiting information from each of your online services. If you spend a lot of time on networks, this program pays a handsome return on your investment. SmartCom 2 for the Apple Macintosh, $150 from Hayes Microcomputer in Norcross, Georgia. For the Computer Chronicles, I'm Paul Schindler.
One of the more interesting pieces of new software shown at the recent Consumer Electronics Show was a program called The Art of Negotiating. Yes, it's based on the book, but the software lets you simulate a negotiating session on the computer prior to a real negotiation, so you can anticipate problem areas. It sells for $195 from a company called Experience in Software. The Old Baby Book has become a software program. Nowhere of Canada has released a program called Baby Care. It's a combination How to Raise Baby book coupled with a database for recording and evaluating all of baby's achievements. Finally, we're used to hearing about adventure programs based on science fiction books. Well, now the tables have turned, and Avon Books is introducing a new series of science fiction books based on Infocom adventure characters. The first two titles will be Planetfall and Wishbringer. That's it for this week's Random Access. We'll see you next time.
The Computer Chronicles is made possible in part by CompuServe, featuring an online reference library, Wall Street reports, at-home shopping, airline reservations, games, and hundreds of other services. CompuServe, helping people get the most from computers. Additional funding is provided by McGraw-Hill, publishers of Byte. Byte's detailed technical articles on new hardware, software, and languages cover developments in computer technology worldwide.
For a transcript of this week's Computer Chronicles, send $3 to PTV Publications, Post Office Box 701, Kent, Ohio 44240. Please indicate program date.